Hello everybody, my name is Rachel. Welcome to my channel, Kalanati. Today I'm going to be wrapping up all of the comics that I've read recently. I'm not entirely sure where this particular wrap-up will fall in the sequence of multiple wrap-ups I need to do, but basically I went 6 weeks without doing any wrap-ups or reviews at the same time that I was reading like crazy. So I have so much stuff to catch up on, and a lot of them are shorter works like comics, novellas, poetry collections, etc. So like I said, this is going to be the one about comics, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about some of these because they either don't merit a lot of talking about or I don't have many notes about them, and I really need my notes this time because I read some of these 4 or 5 weeks ago. So let's just jump straight into it. I finally read The Woods Volume 1. I think this one is called The Arrow, and it's written by James Tynion the Fourth, and illustrated by Michael Dialinis. Also not entirely sure that I wrote that down correctly. So The Woods is a comic series that I have wanted to check out for years. I've heard Harriet Rosie talking about it for a long time, and it was always like, I want to read that, and couldn't until I discovered it was on Hoopla. So this series is about a Minnesota high school that is transported from the Earth to a planet in another solar system. They have no idea why, but they've got like 500 students and faculty who now need to survive, and they have no idea what's going on. I am a little bit worried that this series is going to be too gory for me. I thought this first volume was all right. It sets up a lot of the characters and a lot of the relationships and problems, like the coach is evil and is going to use all of the jocks to terrorize the other students. Like, okay. I think that I'll read another volume or two to see how it further develops. I feel like this particular one was a lot of setup, and I'm not entirely sure if I am really down with the premise or the characters. This actually reminded me a lot of Paper Girls, which is a comic series I should really enjoy, but there's something about it I just don't get. So we'll see. I will try another volume or two and see if I get along with it better, if it kind of develops into something richer, but for the most part, it was just okay. Next, I read a little picture book called Dewdrop by Katie O'Neill. This is about a little axolotl named Dewdrop who is cheering on his friends in a sports competition. It is very much about doing your best, your own personal best, and not comparing yourself to other people, and friendship and all of that. It was really sweet and simple, and Dewdrop is just stinking cute. Like, axolotls are so cute, especially in a cartoony children's picture book. Then I read all 3 volumes of Skyward, which is a comic series written by Joe Henderson, and the illustrator is Leyh Garbett. I think Antonio Fabela did the color work on this. I'm a little bit confused about exactly how many people did the art in this one. So Skyward, the premise of this is interesting but also ridiculous in a very comic book style. Most of Earth's gravity disappears, and the main character, Willow, she's 20 years old. She's lived her entire life in this environment with no gravity, which has radically changed the way that people live and all of that, as you would expect. And basically her father says that he knows of a way to fix the world, and she sets out to do that for him, to take things back to the way they were before, when things were easier because you had gravity, though not everybody wants gravity to come back. I enjoyed the first volume. This one is called My Logie Life, and I really enjoyed the setup. I thought Willow was a good character, and it really introduced the premise of the series well, and I really enjoyed the artwork. And then Volume 2 and Volume 3 just continued the steady downward trajectory. Volume 2, still the ridiculous premise that doesn't make any actual scientific sense. You just have to suspend your disbelief. I started to feel like Willow wasn't really doing anything. She just sort of made nonsensical decisions and wasn't taking advantage of the help and friendship being offered to her. In particular, her friend slash love interest, Edison, who is perhaps the most interesting person in the entire story, was a true ally, and she just wouldn't like bring him into her plots and stuff. I don't know. And then at the end of this volume, there's like an actual author's note that says they decided to change the story at the last minute, and I could see immediately what they were going to do. And volume 3 was not very good. It was very rushed. The writing stopped making any sense at all. There are actual plot holes. Things are resolved, but it's way too easy, or a lot of pivotal things happen off the page. And that twist they introduced, I wish I could talk about it, but it is actually a major spoiler. And I thought that basically they bring back a character, and bringing back that character creates some incredibly stupid decision making that no one would actually do. And I think it actually introduces some plot holes, and I just don't. Anyway, it was fun, but obviously needed to be developed further, and it wrapped up a bit too quickly. I think if it had had another volume, like a 4th volume, and the story had been stronger by the end, we could have seen more of the development of everything. That would have been a lot better. On the other hand, it ended before it wore out its welcome. Next up, I read the first 2 volumes of Ascender by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. This series takes place 10 years after the end of the previous series, Descender, which I really enjoyed, though I didn't feel like the ending of Descender was as really good as I wanted it to be. I think I've come to realize that as much as I love the collaboration with the artist in this particular universe, Nguyen's artwork is awesome. I'm a little bit skeptical about how much I like Jeff Lemire's storytelling ability, let's say that. But Ascender was really interesting. It brings back a lot of the characters from the first series, a lot of familiar faces. You definitely don't want to read this on its own. I think it's good to have all that knowledge from the Descender series as well. But in this case, it's not science fiction, it's fantasy. Descender was a very science fictional, almost like Battlestar Galactica type robot apocalypse. And Ascender is like a de-evolution of the world after the major conflicts, after the war that has broken most of the planets and societies. A powerful, like, evil sorceress named Mother has taken control over everything, and now the point is to get rid of her, basically, and explore the magical powers of the people fighting against her, I think. I'm not entirely sure about the plot description here, guys. What I just said about Jeff Lemire's writing, I'm not sure that it's clear enough, but I love seeing a lot of the characters coming back. The little, like, robot dog is back, and Driller reappears in volume 2, and I was actually really excited after volume 2. It seemed to be a little bit more coherent, and I really, really want to keep reading. But this is definitely a series that I'm reading because I enjoyed the first one and because I enjoy the artwork, and I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that the storytelling is decent. I feel like I'm the only person who ever says anything bad about Jeff Lemire's stuff. Then I read something I loved, which is The Invisible Kingdom of Volume 1, written by G. Willow Wilson, and the artwork is by Christian Ward. I have been looking forward to this series for a long time. I really, really enjoyed reading G. Willow Wilson's run on the Ms. Marvel series. I've read all of that and thought it was great. And I also really enjoyed Christian Ward's artwork when he worked on Odyssey. I had some issues with that, with the artwork being almost too trippy and surreal, but that was kind of part of the Odyssey thing. But I really was curious about these two working together, and it was fantastic. The premise of the series is that the captain of, like, a trade commerce vessel, as well as a novice, like an acolyte in a religious institution, discover independently that the basically big evil corporation is in cahoots with the big religious institution. They present themselves as being enemies, but behind the scenes they're actually working together, and this is like big news. And they want to team up, share knowledge, and expose this evil collaboration, basically. And I thought it was really good because it introduces this world without overpowering you with info dumping. Perhaps that's one of the things about the Descender Ascender series by Jeff Lemire, is that it tries to really info dump a lot of non-dialogue information, and it makes everything very busy. In The Invisible Kingdom, I think that there was this really smart decision to rely on the artwork to show a lot of the world rather than describing it in words, which is what you want in a comic, in this very visual medium. And it worked so well. It didn't have too many words, it wasn't overpowering, it was very balanced. And it introduces the setup, it gives you a great feel for the characters, and especially for their values. You really have to understand where they're coming from and their motivations, and how that works with this thing that they want to do. And I got to the end of it and thought, wow, this is gonna be so good. I understand what's going on immediately. And a lot of stuff happens in the first volume. It's not just world building and setup. There's like a complete arc of action happening, and it ends at a point where you're like, well, that's not where I thought we were gonna kick off from. So yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I have high hopes for the rest of the series. I think it's really important that Wilson is also writing this, because a lot of the story is about religion and faith, and I find that that is something that can be written very poorly in kind of a derogatory way in a lot of fiction. And I'm not a religious person, but I think that it's good to have a respectful portrayal of religious belief and faith, because that is so important to other people as well. So to have a character in the story where her faith is separate from the institutional religion, basically, I think is a really good point to make. But anyway, I need to read volume 2 right away. I'm hoping that it continues to be this good. Then I continued reading Lumberjanes with volume 13 called Indoor Recess. This one is written by Shannon Waters and Kat Leyh, and the artwork is by Dozerdraws. I decided when I read volume 11 or 12 that the series had taken kind of a nosedive. The writing quality wasn't there anymore. It was starting to wear out its welcome with just not addressing the overall plot of the series, and I hated some of the artists' work on this. Like, there's been this revolving door of artists on Lumberjanes, and some of them really work with the style of the series, some of them do not, and I can't stand it when a new artist comes on and draws the characters in a way that makes them completely unrecognizable. Anyway, I was really upset with the previous volume, and I stopped buying the series, but volume 13 definitely improves things. It's still kind of the monster of the week, adventure of the week format that I think it needs to drop and address the broader story arc and kind of start wrapping up the series, but it worked. It was also a bit of a different storytelling format with everything is very contained. Like, it's literally all happening inside because of the weather and stuff. So you have things happening inside at camp, and then a secondary story that it cuts to periodically with the adventures of another group of the characters. And I enjoyed it. It was strong in a way that a couple of the recent volumes haven't been. I'm not sure that this is back on my auto-buy list, but I feel better about continuing to read the series. I'm still saying it needs to wrap up. As much as I've loved this series, it needs to know when to stop rather than just milking it for another couple of years. Like, don't do that. Don't run it into the ground, please. And the last comic that I have to talk about is Stranger Planet by Nathan W. Pyle. This is the second collection of the Strange Planet comics, which are basically these aliens who live kind of human lives, but they call everything differently. Like all the names for things are different, and the language is just this twist, like taking the literal meaning of what we say very colloquially and saying it in a way that makes it obvious how colloquial language isn't literal. Does that make sense? It was really, really good. I enjoyed the first collection, which was just called Strange Planet, and Stranger Planet is more of the same. Actually, I thought it was better though. It really, really tickled me. I laughed out loud a lot, which is not a super common thing for me. And I don't know, how did he manage to write so many rhyming songs while maintaining the way that the aliens talk? It was really good. I highly recommend this if you want to laugh and you want a comic that kind of reveals the nonsense of our daily lives and what we do. So those are the 10 or so comics that I've read in the last 5 to 6 weeks. I will be binging even more of them because I'm trying to catch up on a lot of comics that I want to read that are available on Hoopla. So who knows, I may do another one of these comic wrap-up installments in the future. But I've really been enjoying reading comics again. I kind of didn't read any of them in the first 6 months of the year, and it's nice to have a change of pace. So let me know if you've also read any of these. I would love to know what other people think about Invisible Kingdom in particular, because I think that's going to be a new favorite of mine, and I really haven't heard anybody else talk about it. But yeah, that is enough blathering on from me. Thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you again soon, and until then, bye.